Hello my dear students, and welcome once again to another video for our class in Programming 2. In this video, we will talk about parameters and arguments. Parameters, or a parameter, is a very special type of variable defined in a function declaration. A function may have several parameters separated by comma, but may also have no parameters at all. Greatly depends, it only depends on the requirement of the function as it is designed. On the other hand, an argument is the actual value indicated in a function call that gets passed to the function and is directly stored into the parameter. So the relationship between parameters and arguments goes like this. A parameter is written on the function declaration, while the argument is written on the function invocation. When you declare a function, the variables that you put inside of the parentheses of a function declaration, those are the parameters. But when you invoke or when you call a function, the things that you put inside of the parentheses, those are the arguments. And a parameter, it's always a variable. However, an argument can also be a literal value or a value stored in a variable, and that is the one that is being passed and stored to the parameter, which will then be used by the function in its execution. Let's take a look at this very simple example. We have here a function declaration, and this particular function is identified as sum less 1. Within this function declaration, the parenthesis contains two parameters, int num1 and int num2. These are the parameters. Somewhere down the code in the main method, you also see a call to the function sum less 1. This is a function invocation. And within this function invocation, you'll find that A and B are inside of the parentheses, and these are the arguments. Notice that A has a value of 25 and B has a value of 44. This value from A is then what is being passed to the function and into the first parameter, in this case, num1. For the second argument, B has a value of 44, and that is being passed to the second parameter, in this case, num2. And these two values that are now stored in the parameters are then what is being used in the execution of the code in the body of the function. Let's see some code in action. Here we are once again in our Visual Studio Code editor. First, let me import the scan because we'll be using that in our example. Next, we're going to declare our function. This time, we'll be creating a different function for a different purpose. So I'll call this function twice the difference. I'll be taking the difference of an integer num1 and another integer num2. Again, num1 and num2 in this case, these are the parameters. And here we will compute the difference of num1 and num2. We'll also be using the math class to get the absolute value of the difference. So we'll have diff is equal to math.abs absolute value of num1 minus num2. Now that we get the difference, we are going to multiply it by 2 to get twice the value of the difference. So we'll have int, say twice, and diff times 2. And the twice value is the one that we'll be returning in this function. And notice that our function declaration states that it is an int. So we can return twice because twice here is an int. And now let's try and use this function in a main method. First, we'll ask the user to enter 2 numbers. And we'll have here int a. This will be a. Oops. By the way, let's first instantiate a scanner. So here is a that next int. And then let's just copy this one for our second number. And this will be b. And now we'll store the result of the computation of the function into a variable called res. And we'll see call on twice the difference, and we pass in a and b. And now let's display the result. All right, so here we simply display the message twice of the difference of the value of a and the value of b is the result. So again, these are the parameters, and in here the parameters are within the method or function declaration, and in here within the function invocation or the function call, that is where we put our arguments. You have to understand also that you don't just use, you can also use literal values in as arguments. For example, you can put 5 and 6 here, and thereby we'll be ignoring the entry of our users which are stored in a and b. This is also good. This will also work, but it will always be computing for 5 and 6 every single time. So let's try and run this program. All right, here we says enter first number, and we'll put 5 and 6, and twice of the difference of 5 and 6 is 2. All right, let's run this again. This time let's say 800 and 456. So twice of the difference of 800 and 456 is 688. So that is the relationship between parameters and arguments. Now, one common mistake that new programmers do when writing a function is when they put data entry code within the function instead of using the parameters. They instead have this code here like that. Now this will work the same way as our previous example. However, okay, we are now ignoring the parameters in this case, because now we're asking the user to enter a value again, and that is what we actually, not the one we are using, a minus b. Okay, this will still work the same way, but this is a very bad way of writing a function. That is because this function ignores the parameters which means you don't need the parameter here. And this time, every time you call this function, just simply call twice the difference. And you'll assign it to res. And this time, you can display so as you can see, we no longer have access to the entries A and B, or num1 and num2, because it's being taken here inside of the function, and we don't have access to that here. And also, you can no longer use this function in different way. For example, if we use the previous code, we can use the function in multiple ways other than just asking the value from the user. So let me put this back. So here in this example, we use this function by passing in values A and B, which are taken from the user through the entry class scanner. But besides that, we can also ignore asking for user input, and instead we can just assign our values here. A is equal to 78 and B is equal to 23, for example. And it still works. This time, the program will no longer ask for input from the user, but we are still calling twice the difference in the same way. So we are using twice the difference function in two different ways at the moment. And we can also use this in many other scenarios. So you see, passing parameters instead of asking for input within the function makes the function more usable. So do not in any way ask the user input within a function declaration. Instead, just use parameters to ask for input. Here, the num1 and num2 acts as the input for the function twice the difference. And here, we are passing these values as input into the function. This is the correct way in designing writing functions. So that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you again in the next one.